The sun is barely up, but already the riverbank is humming. Not loudly, just enough that you notice. The low thump of wet cloth against stone, the rustle of reeds in the breeze, a soft voice singing something old in a language you half recognize but couldn't quite translate if you tried. You're walking down a narrow path through a meadow just outside the city. The dew is still clinging to the grass. Your shoes are already damp, but it doesn't bother you. Ahead, just past a sagging willow tree, you spot them, a group of women gathered by the water, sleeves rolled up, linen baskets stacked nearby, and steam rising faintly from a large copper kettle perched over a fire. This isn't just any day, it's laundry day, medieval style. And you're about to learn that it's not nearly as dull or as simple as you might think. If you enjoy this kind of soft, strange, and sleepy history, feel free to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment with your current location and time. It's always lovely to see where tired minds are listening from. Now, let's ease into today's story. The smell hits you before you reach the river. Not bad, just unfamiliar. A kind of earthy sharpness, a mix of wood smoke, wet wool, old herbs, and boiled ash. It's not quite clean, but it's definitely not dirty either. It smells like something in progress. One of the women at the river glances up and waves you closer. Her hair is tucked under a cloth cap, her sleeves are soaked, and her hands are red from scrubbing. She looks tired, but there's a sort of peacefulness to her movements, like this isn't a chore, but a ritual. You sit down on an overturned bucket. The river murmurs beside you, carrying the soft splashes and voices down its winding path. And now the first thing you learn. Doing laundry in the Middle Ages wasn't a private task, it was social, a community affair, a place where gossip flowed faster than the water. Women brought their linens, their soap, and their stories to the wash site, and often they brought their voices too. Today's featured historical fact. In many parts of medieval Europe, washing clothes was accompanied by singing, rhythmic, repetitive songs that helped keep time while beating cloth against rocks or wooden paddles. Some were cheerful, some were mournful, some were just nonsense syllables meant to pass the hours. It wasn't just practical, it was also traditional. You look around the riverbank and begin to notice it, a rhythm, a beat. One woman hums a tune and another joins in. Their movements sync with the music. One scrubs, one rinses, one twists linen into loops like bread dough. It's almost choreographed. And here comes your first strange cultural tidbit. In a few coastal regions of Brittany and Wales, women reportedly used seaweed-based soap, boiled kelp or ash-laced lichen, to help break down oils and soften wool. The concoction smelled faintly briny and was considered ideal for washing garments that had absorbed smoke or fish. One recipe even called for a pinch of dried sea salt to banish fleas from the seams. You glance down at the pile of cloth waiting to be washed, linen shirts, wool tunics, an apron with a red wine stain that looks recent and suspicious. Someone's underclothing is folded carefully in a bundle, held with a wooden pin carved in the shape of a rabbit. There's no soap bar here, no lavender-scented detergent. What you see instead are cloth bags tied with string filled with ash from last week's cooking fire, soft white powder mixed with crushed roots and bits of herb. These bags are soaked in warm water and used like pouches of brewing tea, releasing a murky, slightly soapy liquid that bubbles faintly when stirred. Historians still debate whether this ash-based lye soaking method was effective for actual sanitation or if it just gave the appearance and scent of cleanliness. But many agree it worked well enough to keep fabric usable, if not fragrant. Some even argue the real cleaning power came from physical labor, not the mixture. After all, you'd have to beat a tunic like a drum to get the stains out, and these women did exactly that. You hear another song start. This one's slower. The notes rise and fall with the sound of cloth hitting stone. The women around you sway slightly in time with the melody. You can't quite make out the words, but it sounds like a story about a baker and a fishmonger and a wedding that never happened. You sit still, watch the steam rise from the kettle, watch the hands work, watch the river carry away the suds. And suddenly, this doesn't feel like labor at all. It feels like memory, like ritual, like something older than the stones. You lean back, close your eyes, and listen, because laundry day isn't over yet. You don't remember falling asleep, exactly. Just the way the voices blended into the river's rhythm, how the scent of warm ash and wet linen softened everything around you. When you open your eyes again, the sun has climbed a little higher. A few new faces have joined the group. More baskets have arrived. Someone brought a loaf of bread and left it to rest on a clean cloth near the fire. You're not sure if you're a guest or just part of the scenery now. Either way, no one seems to mind. You watch as a young girl, no more than 12, carefully lifts a bundle of soaked fabric from the kettle and lays it across a wooden bench to cool. She hums to herself. No words, just a tune. Passed down, probably learned from someone who learned it from someone who never stopped to write it down. One of the older women nods in approval. Then, without turning her head, she mutters, "Don't wring it too hard. That's your father's best tunic, and we're still pretending it's new." You smile. There's a kind of intimacy here that feels timeless, and maybe a little unexpected. Here's your historical fact for this chapter. Medieval people did laundry far more often than popular myths suggest. No, they didn't wash everything every day, but underclothing, head coverings, and household linens were cleaned regularly, especially in towns with rivers, springs, or access to communal washing areas. Filth was noticed. Cleanliness may have been limited by resources, but it wasn't neglected. And here's something odd. In many towns, laundry days were scheduled around the moon. Waxing moons were thought to favor stain removal, while waning moons were avoided. Some believed that clothes washed under a full moon dried faster and resisted mildew. It's unclear how effective this was, but the schedule stuck in many regions for generations. You glance at the linen drying on a nearby branch. It flutters slightly in the breeze. Clean, maybe not perfectly white, but brighter than before. Someone's shirt still bears the memory of wine or berry juice, or both. But it looks loved. You begin to realize that laundry wasn't just about hygiene. It was about care, preservation. making something last through another season. The youngest woman in the group sits beside you and offers a small pot of soap paste, a thick, mossy green mixture that smells like crushed mint and firewood. Seaweed, she says, matter-of-factly, from the marshes. You lean in. The scent is sharp, but not unpleasant. You ask how it's made. She shrugs. Boil it, scrape it, dry it, pound it, boil it again. Then she adds, takes forever. Works better than lye, though. Doesn't burn your hands. That's your strange cultural tidbit. In coastal regions, seaweed soap wasn't just common, it was highly prized. Families would collect marsh seaweed at low tide, rinse it, dry it in the sun, then grind it with limestone or ash into a coarse powder. Some recipes included animal fat or goat's milk, depending on local abundance. The result? A slippery, slightly gritty paste that cut through smoke and grease better than anything sold at market. Historians still debate whether these seaweed mixtures were truly soap in the modern sense, or more like herbal cleansing aids. But many agree they were effective, especially when paired with elbow grease and communal effort. Your knees are stiff from sitting. You stand and stretch, walking to the edge of the water. A flat stone sits there, worn smooth from decades, maybe centuries of fabric pounding. A small wooden paddle lies beside it. You pick it up. It's heavier than you expected. The older woman, the one who waved you in earlier, calls out, "Don't hit it like it owes you rent. Fold it first." You oblige, clumsily folding a towel into a loose rectangle. You smack it once, a small splash. Another woman giggles. "Not bad," someone says, "for a city boy." You choose not to correct them. Time moves strangely here. It isn't marked by clocks or bells, but by the feel of the sun on your shoulders, the smell of steam on fabric, the rhythm of stories traded between scrub and rinse. Someone shares a rumor about a merchant who tried to bribe a washerwoman for news of a rival's underclothing. Another says a cat dragged a bar of soap into the priest's chamber. No one believes her, but everyone laughs anyway. You sit again, this time beside the drying line. A single sock flaps in front of you like a banner of victory. You've done nothing useful, and no one seems to mind. You belong here, in the quiet, soapy heartbeat of the day. A kettle lid rattles. A song begins again. This time, it's a lullaby, sung softly, maybe to the cloth, maybe to the river, maybe to you. You close your eyes and let the water do the rest. The lullaby fades into the river, like it was always meant to live there. You open your eyes again, slower this time. It's hard to tell how long you've been resting. Minutes? An hour? Maybe that part doesn't matter. Around you, the laundry site is still alive, still moving, still singing softly between breaths. A group of women are twisting wet cloth around wooden poles, hanging the loops over a fence made of twisted hazel branches. The garments drip rhythmically, sending down small streams that darken the dirt below. You watch a pair of breeches slowly unfurl like they're bowing to the sun. One of the women sees your gaze and says, "Better the sun gets them than the goats." She points to a steep hill in the distance where 3 very determined goats are climbing towards someone's drying socks. You laugh quietly. It feels good to laugh here, like it doesn't take effort. Now, today's historical fact. While we imagine medieval people as mostly dirty or indifferent to hygiene, many communities actually had public laundry laws. In some cities, there were designated days when residents could use communal washing spots, either on the river or at wash houses, which were simple wooden structures with benches, kettles, and water access. In Paris, by the 15th century, laundry licenses were granted to women called lavandières, who were paid by wealthier families to wash household linens and garments. In smaller towns, like the one you're in now, there are no licenses, just traditions. One woman here, the one with the loudest voice and the least patience for nonsense, seems to run the show. She corrects technique, distributes soap balls, and occasionally smacks a careless washer with a wet rag, lovingly. You sit beside her while she peels a boiled root vegetable with one hand and stirs the kettle with the other. She explains the order of things. Whites first, then wolves, then the truly unfortunate garments at the bottom of the basket. Some of these are so stained they should have been burned, she jokes, but still, they try. You ask how long they've been doing this. She shrugs. Always. Here's your strange cultural tidbit. In many regions, laundry sites were considered socially protected spaces. Arguments were discouraged. Gossip was expected, but cruelty wasn't tolerated. And in some areas, especially among certain rural communities, men were forbidden from approaching the laundry banks while work was in progress, not because of modesty, though that was a factor, but because laundry time was sacred time. It was when women ran the world, even just for a few hours. Songs, stories, advice, confessions, all happened by the water. It was part therapy, part theater, part routine. You watch a middle-aged woman retell a story about her mother's wedding tunic and how it was accidentally dyed green by gooseberries. She wore it anyway, she said it matched her mood. Another woman pipes up. My cousins did that, except it was red wine. People thought it was blood. There's a pause. Then laughter, bright and sincere. Historians still debate whether these laundry gatherings served as early community organizing spaces, informal councils where women shared news, negotiated domestic arrangements, even settled disputes. Some scholars believe that among working-class women, the wash bank was where real power flowed, not in law books or guild halls, but between steam, soap, and storytelling. You look around and believe it. A cat appears, because of course it does. It pads silently along the edge of the river, tail high, eyes half-lidded. Someone tosses it a fishbone. It sniffs once, unimpressed, then curls up in the sun beside a pile of drying tunics. Its ears twitch to the rhythm of the paddles. It seems content. You wonder if it's always here, if it knows the songs, if it understands that this is a safe place where linen is cleaned, voices are carried on, and goats are mostly kept away. You lean back, and from the fence beside you, a damp sleeve brushes your shoulder. You don't move, you just sit and listen. A song starts again. You don't know the words, but somehow it still feels familiar. The sun has risen fully now, but its light is still soft, filtered through a high haze, as if even the sky understands that this isn't a day to rush. The river glints gently in the background, and you hear the hum of bees somewhere beyond the trees. One of the women dips a hand into the water and sighs, "It'll warm up next week, probably." You've been here for hours, and still no one has asked you to leave. You watch as another pot of water is placed over the fire. This one isn't for scrubbing, it's for softening woolens, a more delicate business than slapping linen against stone. The wool is washed separately, with cooler water and far more patience. It soaks in a wide wooden tub while someone stirs in what looks like a sachet of herbs tied up in cloth. You ask what's in it. The reply, nettle, rosemary, and old mint, for scent and to keep the weevils nervous. You decide not to question the science of it. Today's historical fact. In several medieval regions, linen and wool were washed using different techniques and even in different locations. Wool, which could shrink or felt if handled roughly, was treated more gently. Some areas had designated wool ponds or wash houses set apart just for garments made of animal fiber. The workers who handled them, often older women with strong hands and very few illusions, were sometimes called wool wives or wool mothers, depending on local dialect. Here's something strange you notice now. Even the tools are different. The paddles used for wool are flatter, smoother. The soap is gentler, closer to a paste than a powder. And no one sings during the wool soaking. It's a quieter moment, not solemn, just still, like the wool needs silence to remember its shape. One of the younger women tiptoes past, carrying a basin full of undergarments. She's humming something tuneless. Her cheeks are pink from steam and sun. She deposits the basin near the drying racks and returns with a second bundle. This one larger, heavier. "Blankets," she mutters, "from the miller's house." Everyone groans in sympathy. Here's your odd cultural tidbit. In certain mountain villages, blankets were washed only twice a year, and the process was considered both a chore and a local event. Huge vats were heated, and a team of women would spend the better part of a day just soaking, pressing, and rinsing the thick wool. In some towns, local children were paid with sweetbread to help stomp the blankets clean. Yes, stomp. Inside barrels or tubs, like pressing grapes for wine. A soggy, sloshy affair that left everyone soaked and laughing and slightly itchy. The woman beside you, still peeling something root-like, says, "We tried that once with boots on. Ruined everything. Blankets smelled like wet leather for a month." Another voice adds, "I remember that. It wasn't the blankets, it was her boots. She never washed them." The laughter returns, low and steady, like an old wheel turning. There's no rush here, no pressure, just movement and warmth and stories that cling to the steam like linen on a breeze.
A breeze picks up. It rustles the drying garments like turning pages. You watch a white chemise ripple, then still. There's peace in the motion, something meditative. You walk a little farther down the bank. A willow tree leans low over the water. Beneath it sits the cat from earlier, curled into a tight comma. It opens one eye, regards you as if to say, "Yes, you again," and then closes its eye without further comment. There's a bell near its paw, just a little one, rusted, decorative, maybe not even functional anymore. But still, someone thought it was worth placing there. You sit in the grass beside the cat and rest your hands on your knees. The sun warms your back, the river carries someone's humming toward the trees, and the world, for now, is clean. The afternoon stretches on, slow and unhurried, like a cat in a sunbeam. You sit a while longer beneath the willow, the grass cool beneath you, the air damp and rich with green smells. A basket of newly washed linens rests nearby, steaming faintly as the last of the river water rises from the fabric and vanishes into the air. A pair of shoes lies forgotten in the mud, and no one seems in a rush to claim them. You stand and walk back toward the washing area. Someone has unpacked a lunch, flatbread, a little cheese, a bruised apple sliced into quarters. They wave you over with the same ease they might offer you a paddle or a pot of soap. You sit, you eat. No one asks who you are, because by now it doesn't matter. Here's your historical fact for today. While medieval laundry rarely included the fine silks or velvets of nobility, it did include nearly every functional textile in the home: blankets, towels, tablecloths, aprons, underclothes, and even strips of linen used for wrapping herbs or cleaning wounds. And almost all of it was made from natural fibers: linen from flax, wool from sheep, hemp in rougher homes, and, if you were lucky, cotton brought in through southern trade routes. These fabrics absorbed everything, from smoke to sweat to spilled ale, and they remembered it. Which meant that washing wasn't optional, it was inevitable. A woman with strong arms and a dusting of flour on her sleeve leans over and says, "You haven't lived until you've tried scrubbing soot out of a child's tunic with nothing but boiled moss and curses." She's smiling, but you believe her. There's something about her energy that suggests she's wrestled both firewood and toddlers before breakfast. Across the way, a younger woman tries to lift a wet wool cloak from the kettle and promptly drops it back in with a splash. The others groan in unison, not angry, just resigned. Someone sings, quietly, a half melody you've heard before. You begin to wonder how many of these songs were invented just for this task, passed down like old recipes, whispered into the steam like charms. Your strange cultural tidbit: some medieval washerwomen developed what we'd now call signature techniques. A certain way of folding fabric before soaking, a method of knotting cloth to avoid stretch, even personal paddle rhythms that were said to loosen stains better than others. And in a few regions, washerwomen were known by nicknames tied to their quirks: Left Hand Agnes, three-bucket berth, the soap whisperer. It was half gossip, half local legend. You begin to realize, in a world where cloth was precious and soap was scarce, these women weren't just keeping linens clean, they were keeping households afloat. Historians still debate whether laundry songs had coded messages in them, whether some verses passed on more than rhythm, maybe advice or warnings or stories edited for safety. The records are sparse, of course, but some believe the verses changed slightly from town to town, adjusted like folklore, shaped by need and weather and memory. You hear one now, or part of one. If the cloth be stiff with lies, bend the wind and rinse the skies. If the thread be foul with fear, twist the tail and wash it clear. It makes no literal sense, and yet it feels true. You wander again, this time to the far end of the riverbank, where a few elder women sit on stools carved from stumps, resting their feet in cool water. They nod as you approach. One of them beckons you over and hands you a length of cloth, coarse hemp fraying at the edges. "This one's a fighter," she says, "used for bandaging, cooking, mopping, wrapping onions, been through more kitchens than a rat." You take the cloth and dip it in the bucket beside her. It smells faintly of vinegar and herbs. You rub it gently against itself, then fold it. The process feels ceremonial. "She's teaching you the burial fold," someone teases from behind. You freeze. The elder woman cackles. "For onions, not people." You laugh, a little more than necessary, then fold the cloth again, just to be sure. Back near the fire, the pot has gone quiet. No more garments inside, just water cooling slowly. A woman stirs it absent-mindedly with a stick, as if the pot still needs company. You realize laundry day is nearly over. One by one, women collect their baskets, pat their knees, rub their backs, and stretch like trees waking from a nap. Some sing a final verse, others mutter goodbyes. The sun has shifted westward, and the air has cooled just enough to remind everyone there's soup waiting somewhere. You look down. Your hands are damp. There's soap under your fingernails. And you feel, for some reason, that you've accomplished something, even if no one could name what it was. Maybe it's enough to have listened, to have watched the steam rise, to have heard the stories. Or maybe it's just the seaweed soap finally soaking into your soul. You can't say for sure, but the day isn't done. Not yet. The baskets are packed. The paddles leaned against trees. The kettle has been emptied and upturned to dry. You find yourself walking beside a woman who hums as she goes, her bundle balanced easily on her hip. The path is lined with flattened grass and soft footprints, as if the ground itself knows this routine and steps aside respectfully. No one rushes. That's important. Laundry day ends the same way it begins, slowly, quietly, and together. You glance behind. The river still glistens in the late afternoon light, a trail of foam and memory. A shirt has been forgotten on a bush. Someone will find it next time. Or maybe not. Maybe the river keeps souvenirs. As the women walk back toward the village, conversation turns to other things. Bread rising, shoes needing mending, the priest who lost his sandals in the mud again. The youngest one remarks that her cat brought home another beetle and proudly deposited it in the water bucket. The others nod. Better a beetle than another belt, one mutters. Today's historical fact. In many medieval communities, especially in France, Flanders, and the Low Countries, the term baguette referred to both a small cloth bundle and a local gossip report. Because laundry wasn't just a task, it was a source of information. A freshly scrubbed apron might mean a celebration was coming. A tear in someone's undershirt could hint at an argument. The fabric told stories, and the women noticed. There's even record of certain medieval legal disputes where washerwomen were called as witnesses, not for what they saw, but for what they washed. One court record describes a woman swearing under oath that a nobleman's tunic had 3 weeks' sweat in it, and a rip that spoke of climbing out a window. You pass a vegetable garden and catch the scent of crushed thyme and old onions. A rooster announces its opinion from somewhere you cannot see. You walk beside the oldest of the group. She carries nothing. Her back doesn't allow it, but walks tall anyway. She tells you that in her youth, laundry day ended with a cup of hot milk and honey, served from a black pot no one washed properly because they believed it carried the blessing from batch to batch. She adds, the blessing didn't stop the milk from curdling, but it kept the neighbors talking. Your odd cultural detail. In some Germanic towns, it was traditional to dip the edges of fresh-washed table linens in apple cider vinegar before hanging them to dry. This wasn't just for scent. It was thought to ward off moths, mildew, and, strangely, lies. A house whose linen smelled of vinegar was said to be honest by the hearth. You imagine walking into a home filled with the sharp, clean tang of vinegar-steamed fabric and realize it would feel trustworthy somehow. As the village comes into view, red roofs, low stone walls, chickens that respect no boundaries, the group begins to split. One by one, women peel off down side paths toward their houses, carrying the fruits of their day not in pride, but in quiet rhythm. It is simply what is done, what has always been done. You pass a well. A child draws water in a tin cup. He stares at your damp sleeves and wrinkled shirt and asks, "Were you at the river?" You nod. He squints. "Did they let you scrub?" You pause, considering. "Kind of," you say. He nods, satisfied. "You'll be cleaner than most of the village then." He tosses the rest of his water at a nearby cat, who takes it personally and disappears into a stack of hay. Historians still debate whether laundry day carried any spiritual or symbolic meaning beyond practicality. Some suggest that in agrarian societies, washing cloth was an extension of washing the self, done in preparation for feast days, births, deaths, weddings, and even harvest festivals. Others argue that it was simply the one task that allowed for storytelling uninterrupted by men, politics, or paperwork. Whatever the truth, it's clear that laundry days were about more than linen. They were about presence, about community, about clearing the slate, not just for the fabric, but for the people too. You finally reach your lodging, a small timber-framed inn with a crooked sign and a crooked door to match. The innkeeper raises an eyebrow at your appearance, but says nothing. He just hands you a folded towel, clearly washed and line-dried in the same sun you've been under all day. You climb the stairs slowly. Your shoulders are tired, in that good way, the way that feels like you've earned a rest. The room is small, clean, and quiet. You close the window shutters halfway. The air smells faintly of soap. Maybe seaweed. Maybe mint. Maybe just memory. You sit on the edge of the bed, cloth draped and low to the floor, and look at your hands. They are wrinkled and they are clean. And somehow, that feels like a good place to begin again.
Night has settled over the village. It doesn't fall the way it does in cities, not all at once in a flash of street lamps and shuttered storefronts. Here, night seeps in gradually, first through the corners of courtyards, then through the thatched rooftops, and finally into the silence between voices. The inn creaks gently as you lie back on your bed, eyes half open, watching a candle stub flicker from a wall sconce. It smells like beeswax and lavender. Someone downstairs is humming again, not the same tune from earlier, but something similar. You think it might even be the same rhythm used by the washerwomen, slowed down now, stretched into the night. The inn creaks gently as you lie back on your bed, eyes half open, watching a candle stub flicker from a wall sconce. It smells like beeswax and lavender. Someone downstairs is humming again, not the same tune from earlier, but something similar. You think it might even be the same rhythm used by the washerwomen, slowed down now, stretched into the night. You close your eyes for a moment, not to sleep just yet, just to listen. Here's your historical fact for this quiet stretch. Medieval inns often offered laundry services for travelers, especially along pilgrimage routes and merchant roads. The work was usually done by innkeeper families or hired women in the village. In better inns, clean linen sheets were prized, and the sight of white fabric hanging outside a guest house could be a selling point to weary travelers. Inns were graded less by stars and more by how clean your undertunic came out on checkout day. You think of the towel handed to you earlier, coarse but fresh. It smells faintly of the river, of smoke, of something that's been well used and well cared for. From your window, you hear voices on the street, 2 women walking home, their baskets now empty. Their laughter is low and familiar, the kind that happens after a day spent doing something hard with people who understand why it matters. You imagine their hands, red, wrinkled, strong, their arms tired, their backs sore, but their hearts lightened, just a little. There's something sacred in that, something old and true. And now for your cultural tidbit. In some regions, freshly laundered linens were believed to carry luck, especially if they were the first wash of a new season. People would hang their newly cleaned tunics or tablecloths in windows or along hedges, not just to dry, but to air in the blessing. It was thought that fabric carried energy, and cleaning it let that energy reset. In one Welsh folktale, a young bride is told to wear her grandmother's apron on her wedding day,
but only after it's been washed under the March moon and dried facing east. Not for cleanliness, for continuity, to make sure the stories stitched into the cloth don't unravel. You sit up and glance at your own shirt, now folded over a wooden chair near the fire. It's dry now, smells slightly different, wood smoke and something herbal. Maybe you didn't wash it, but maybe just being near all that rhythm and steam and river was enough to change it a little. Like language, like memory, like stories passed down without ink. Historians still debate whether these beliefs around washing, blessings, curses, moon phases and all were actually followed or simply remembered in hindsight. But what's certain is this: laundry wasn't just domestic labor. It was cultural preservation, a place where skills, songs, and quiet power were passed from hand to hand without ceremony, without recognition, but not without meaning. You get up and crack the window open just slightly. The air outside is cool and wet, filled with the hush of a village that knows its own bedtime. You hear a distant splash, probably the same cat from earlier, chasing a frog or a shadow. The candle guttered out a few minutes ago. You hadn't noticed. Now the room is lit only by moonlight, thin, quiet, and silver as thread pulled from the sky. You pull the blanket over your shoulders. It's scratchy but comforting. Old wool washed 1,000 times, probably under the same riverbank where you spent the day. And somehow the scent of it makes you feel held. Not by arms, but by time, by tradition, by a rhythm older than clocks. You close your eyes again, not just to rest, but to remember. Because somewhere tonight, by another river, someone else is scrubbing linen by moonlight and humming the same song. Morning comes slowly. There's no bell, no rooster shouting, just the quiet clatter of someone downstairs stoking the fire, and the faint scent of fresh bread drifting up through the floorboards. You open your eyes to soft light slanting through wooden shutters. You stretch. Your body feels heavy, not in a bad way, but in the way that comes from having been useful, or at least having been present for something that mattered. The shirt you left over the chair is warm now, kissed by the morning air. You slip it on. It fits differently, not tighter, not looser, but somehow lighter, as though the fibers have been reminded of their purpose. You walk downstairs, nod at the innkeeper, who hands you a hunk of bread without asking, as if you've lived here for years. You eat it slowly. The crust is hard, the inside is soft, like the stories people tell in passing. Outside, the village is already awake, not bustling, just gently stirring. A dog trots down the lane. A child chases a cartwheel. A baker lifts a steaming tray from a brick oven. And then, a familiar sound. The splash of water, the slap of fabric, and, faintly, singing. You follow the path again, through the grass now dewed and greener than it was yesterday. The same willow tree leans over the river, and there, as if time has folded in on itself, the women are back. Sleeves rolled, baskets open, smiles exchanged. Because of course, laundry never ends. It just pauses long enough to let you miss it. Here's your final historical fact. Medieval laundry wasn't done weekly, neatly, or on a schedule we'd recognize. It was done when needed, when time allowed, when the weather cooperated. And yet, it was reliable, like the phases of the moon, like the seasons. It tied people to the land, the water, and each other. More than once, a medieval chronicler refers to it not as washing, but as the keeping of cloth. Your final cultural detail. Some medieval families passed down cloth as heirlooms, not just for the fabric, but for what it had survived. Floods, fire, childbirth, feasts, war. The fabric held all of it, and keeping it clean was a way of keeping the story intact. In a few rare cases, these heirlooms had verses sewn into the hems, tiny lines of prayer, poetry, or blessings. Not meant to be seen, only meant to be kept. Historians still debate how much of this was symbolic and how much was superstition. But anyone who has folded a worn shirt and remembered the person who wore it understands. Cloth carries memory, and washing it doesn't erase the story. It lets it breathe. You walk back to the riverbank, and the same elder woman looks up and says, "You again." You nod. She tosses you a cloth. You catch it without looking. And somehow, you already know what to do. Final wind down. You rest now. Not in a chair or a bed or even on the riverbank, but somewhere softer. Somewhere between time and memory. The hum of linen flapping in the breeze, the warmth of hands folding something carefully, the rhythm of voices rising and falling like water on stone. The day has ended, not with noise, but with a hush. The baskets are lighter, the fabric is clean, and something in your own chest feels less heavy. You don't need to understand the songs. You don't need to remember every face. You were there. You were part of it. And in the quiet of that rhythm, you found rest. Let the water flow. Let the soap soften. Let the steam rise. And let your thoughts drift now, like cloth in a gentle current. Good night, traveler. Sleep well. And may your stories always be washable.